What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday, show where we take your videos, we put them on this little TV, and I tell you how you can lift better so you can lift more weight. Our first submission today comes from Louis JK, and he's doing some sumo deadlifts. Now, for the most part, these look really good. We're not losing much position off the floor. Everything's kind of staying in alignment. It doesn't look like the back's rounding out. As a matter of fact, it looks like the back is kind of doing the opposite. We're going into a fair bit of extension here. Now, I don't know what your lifting history is like, how your deadlift's feeling. If it's feeling good and there's no pain and you're able to make progress strength-wise, maybe don't change anything. If you're struggling and feeling stuck, one thing I would try to do is go into actually a little bit less extension in the back. What's happening is right as you start pulling, your back is arching really, really hard, and then as you go through your lockout, it looks like you're really kind of pulling and extending the back to finish the movement. Whereas generally, we want to see you trying to kind of push the hips and get more hip extension as you get towards lockout. So, like I said, if you're not having any issues with it, don't change anything. If you are finding yourself stuck or maybe your back's hurting a little bit, I would try to maintain a little bit more of a neutral posture, try and cue those ribs down a little bit to maintain a nice flat angle in the back so we're not overextending off the floor, and then make sure we're finishing with the hips, not just by pulling the back into a whole bunch of extension. Hopefully that helps you, man. Our next submission comes from Alejandro, and Alejandro is doing some squats. Now, he did mention in his email that his squat feels good, and he's not having any pain with anything. He's not a competitive lifter, but he's just looking to gain strength. One thing that I would probably try out, Alejandro, and I want to stress try out, is a little bit of a wider stance in the squat. It looks like in order to get to depth with the narrow stance that you have, you're really having to kind of bottom out, and it's causing a bit of a pronounced sticking point and a fair bit of looseness in the bottom of your squat. I would probably try to get you to I would probably have you try a wider stance squat. This is going to allow you to ideally get depth without having to sacrifice any positioning, without having to really loosen and try to bounce into the bottom. And it should allow you to squat a little smoother and avoid some of that sticking point. So I would just move your stance out a couple inches on either side, try that out, or do a wide stance and narrow stance squat kind of on separate days and just see what feels more comfortable. Might be you're way more comfortable squatting like this, but I would definitely get you to try a wider stance squat to see if there's any benefit to it, and also to see if that's more comfortable for you. Our next video is another squat, and this one comes from Anna in Poland. Now, Anna's concerned that she's maybe leaning forward a little bit too far, as well as she's not sure if she's hitting depth. Now, unfortunately, with the angle of the video and the way that the safeties are sitting, it is kind of hard to tell if you're hitting depth. I would say probably. Looks like most of the reps you are getting to depth. I don't think you're bending forward or leaning forward too far, but one thing I would try to do is allow your knees to just travel a little further forward. That's going to keep you a little more upright and potentially allow you to get a bit more depth. So I wouldn't change much about your squat because it looks very good, very controlled. It also might just be hard to tell with this. Looks like a relatively light percentage for you. So a couple things you can do, like I said, is just allow those knees forward, and that's going to hopefully get you to stay a little bit more upright if that's something you're concerned about or you want to try being a little bit more of an upright squatter. Allow those knees to travel forward. Hopefully that takes care of you. Our final form check for today comes from Connor. Now, Connor said he's just getting into deadlifting and powerlifting because he's been training physique for a while. Now, if you look at the guy, he's obviously super jacked, super shredded, so you can tell that he's been training physique. Now, the thing with your deadlift, Connor, he says that is quite tall, and that he feels like that puts him at a bit of a disadvantage, specifically for deadlifting. He's having to kind of overcome some technical difficulties. It looks like you're doing a really, really good job of setting up, and most of the mechanics are pretty sound, but the biggest thing I think you need to work on is a little bit more patience off the floor. Now, if you watch the lift, the first thing that happens when you initiate the first drive of the movement is we're seeing those hips kind of shoot up a little bit behind you, which is putting your shoulders out over the bar and going to potentially over time cause that bar to drift out and really kind of kill your leverage a little bit. What I would try to get you to do is, like I said, be a bit more patient off the floor. Now, when you start the lift, try and get that push feeling and really work to keep that torso angle the same as in your setup. What we don't want to see is we don't want to see that torso angle change as you go through the initial phase of the movement. What we do want to see is that torso angle stay the same for the first 3-4 inches off the floor, and then when we get to around the knees, we start to pull back. So a little bit of patience, try to maintain that torso angle better, and that should go a long ways. All right, guys, that's it for Form Check Friday today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all of your submissions. As per usual, we are doing some form checks with our Calgary Barbell Live that we do every week. We haven't nailed down a concrete time for that. We're still kind of experimenting, trying out some different times to see when works best for people. So hopefully we'll be able to give you guys a little bit of notice when that's happening, but the response has been really good so far, so thanks to everybody for tuning in on those. If you do want to get your form critiqued on our Form Check Friday show, go ahead and email formcheckfriday@gmail.com and we'll get your video on the channel. All right, guys, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.